detracted from our reputation. Mr. Speaker, there have been many tributes to you today, and I would wish to add my own, in that if you'd acted on the letter I wrote to you in September 2015, a year before the incident of the then Chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee, where I raised my concerns with you that the actions of and activities of the then Chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee, if they came to light, would risk seriously damaging...
One will resume his seat. This matter was raised on a previous occasion, and I am going to say in all solemnity and with firmness to the honourable gentleman and to the House what the position is. I could not have known that the honourable gentleman intended to use this debate in the way that he has thus far done, in an orderly fashion, but in a way that I could not have predicted. I certainly couldn't have anticipated, and the honourable gentleman didn't do me the courtesy of telling me that he intended to address my reaction to these matters. But I will say to the House that I do recall, I don't have the detail in front of me, I do recall the honourable gentleman writing to me, highlighting his concerns about the right honourable gentleman, the member for Leicester East, and imploring me to act. And I indicated to the honourable gentleman, in terms, both on the basis of my own knowledge, I say to the House, of the role and responsibility of the Chair, and on the strength of the professional advice of the Clerk of the House, that it was not, repeat, not, for me to intervene in any way, shape or form. The premise upon which the request by the honourable gentleman for me to intervene was based was entirely, and I emphasise entirely, misplaced. It is not for the Speaker to get involved in the study of or investigation into complaints that are made about individual members of Parliament. It is not for the Speaker to perform a second job as a kind of nighttime Columbo, looking into matters that one member wants to raise about another. That is not only not necessary, it is not appropriate. It is totally out with, I say with complete clarity and for the avoidance of doubt, it is totally out with the role of the Speaker. If after 9.5 years in this place, notwithstanding my best efforts to help the honourable gentleman to do better, he still labours not merely under the misapprehension, but under the ignorant delusion that it is somehow the responsibility of the Chair to intervene, frankly, I have to say to colleagues, I can't help him. I can't help him. I've tried to help the honourable gentleman. I've tried on many occasions to educate the honourable gentleman. But if the honourable gentleman won't be helped or educated, I can't do anything about that. But what I can do something about, and I have sought to do so for 10 years, is securing compliance with the procedures of this House. It is absolutely legitimate for the honourable gentleman to speak in this debate if he thinks it's proper to do so, and if the honourable gentleman feels that the general approach that he's adopted to these sorts of matters, i.e. allegations of misconduct against other members, enhances his standing in the House, it is entirely for him to make that judgment. If he thinks it makes him a more popular or a respected member to spend quite a lot of time writing to the Standards Commissioner, complaining about this one or that one or the other one, if that's the approach to parliamentary service, or part of the approach to parliamentary service for which the honourable gentleman opts, that is his privilege. And if he wishes to speak in this debate, including when I have resumed my seat, he is welcome to do so. I think he might usefully make a judgment about whether the House wants to hear him at great length when there is a clear judgment by the committee which has been accepted, which has been endorsed by the opposition chief whip. If he still feels he wants to speak at some considerable length and it makes him feel better and he thinks what an excellent contribution he's made, that's his prerogative. What the honourable gentleman won't do is breach the rules of this House and tell me, I say, not least to members of the public, what the job of the chair is. I know what the job of the chair is, and I've done it to the best of my ability, and to err is human, so I make my mistakes, but I've done it to the best of my ability for over a decade. And I don't simply assert or suggest. I state with complete confidence that it is not part of my job to make representations to a member that because of this rumour or that rumour, or this allegation or that allegation, or this person disliking him or that person disliking him, therefore it would be best if he stood down from the chairmanship of his select committee. That is not the responsibility of the Speaker of the House of Commons. And if the honourable gentleman still thinks otherwise, I fear he's beyond redemption in the matter. I mean, I'd like to help him, but he just doesn't want to be helped. Mr. Andrew Bridgen.
Speaker, I thank you for your advice. As always, for the last 10 years, you have advised me on many occasions. But had you waited for my conclusion, you would have seen that I was going to extol your decision not to get involved in this matter. Because had you done so, we may well have protected the reputation of this House, but I doubt we ever would have got to see the full report that is now before us, Mr. Speaker. And the answer is that despite this report having been public knowledge, been read by members for several days, the member for Leicester East remains a member of the Labour Party. He has the Labour whip. He currently still is a serving member of the Labour National Executive Committee, and he is still currently the candidate for Leicester East at the forthcoming election. That, of course, Mr. Speaker, is a matter for the Labour Party, and also a matter, I believe, for the public who we all serve in our own constituencies, not less Leicester East, which I believe, and I think many other people do, that Leicester East deserves rather better, Mr. Speaker. We all recall that we think about what we've done in the past and the way we've voted, and we'll all be held to account for that very shortly on the 12th of December. That only a month after the member for Leicester East resigned following the Rent Boy and Cocaine scandal from the chairmanship of the Home Affairs Select Committee, rather reluctantly, he was nominated by his party, the Labour Party, to go on to the Justice Committee. Only 4 weeks late after, he'd considered himself unsuitable to continue as chairing the Home Affairs Select Committee.
Order, I'm sorry, but I must invite the honourable gentleman to resume his seat, and I'll tell him why. The honourable gentleman tries to demonstrate how fair he's being by saying that belatedly he agrees with me, which he's never previously given any indication of at all. If that's what he now says, well, then I'm glad that he's come to recognise the error of his past ways and the extreme folly, as well as the sheer nastiness of making repeated representations to the Chair to intercede in a matter in which the Chair, of course, should not intercede. But what the honourable gentleman is doing now is what he attempted to do on the occasion of that debate about the nomination of the right honourable gentleman for the Justice Select Committee. What the honourable gentleman is seeking to do is to drag into this debate, as he dragged into that debate, material that it was not appropriate to share with the House in the context of the debate. This is a short debate on a report, and the reason why the honourable gentleman's point is not relevant or appropriate is that, first of all, he's going back on matters to do with the Justice Select Committee, of which I think the report doesn't treat. The report does not get involved in that. That is an historic matter, and it's a matter of political opinion and parliamentary debate at the time. It is not relevant to the Standards Committee's report. And secondly, the honourable gentleman, who is a party politician and a campaigning party politician, and I acknowledge that, the honourable gentleman, I'm afraid, just cannot resist getting into the subject of whether it is or isn't appropriate for a particular person to be a candidate in a given election, and the honourable gentleman's view, which he obviously thinks is enormously important and interesting, although it may not be enormously important or interesting to anyone else, as to whether the health of the people of Leicester East is best served by representation by its current right honourable member or by someone else. I have to say to the honourable gentleman, I'm not interested in that. And I don't frankly think the House is interested in that. If the honourable gentleman wants to say, look, I complained and I was right, and the report has criticised, censured and punished, or proposes to do so, the right honourable gentleman, he could have done that and sat down by now. But I give him a final warning, and it is a warning. I'm not going to have the House abused by the way in which the honourable gentleman chooses to behave. If he's got a sentence or two that he wants to utter as to why he thinks it's a decent report and he agrees with it, that's fine. If he wants to launch a further ad hominem attack on the right honourable gentleman member of Leicester East, this is not the time or place to do so. And I do, in all sincerity and kindness, say to the honourable gentleman, show some antennae, man, for the will of the House, and show some sensitivity. You've made your point in making a complaint, which the honourable gentleman had every right to do, and the committee has determined the matter. It would be, I think, seemly if the honourable gentleman speedily brought his speech to a conclusion. Mr. Andrew Bridgen.
Thank you once again for more help and advice, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman will resume his seat. It's not help and advice. I'm telling the honourable gentleman what the position is. Don't mix it with the chair. If you've got a couple more sentences to utter, you will do so. If you want to dilate at length, you will not. Mr. Andrew Bridgen.
Mr. Speaker, I will bring my remarks to a conclusion, but it is clear to me, and it will be clear to the public, that to the fag end of your tenure in that chair, you are defending the indefensible and your very close relationship with the honourable member in question. The House can come to its own conclusions. The Standards Committee has come to its own conclusions, and, Mr. Speaker, the public will come to theirs. Thank you very much.
I'm quite sure the public will come to its own conclusion. Let me say to the honourable gentleman, he can try to smear me. He will get the square root of nowhere. I am friendly with the right honourable gentleman, the member for Leicester East, as I'm friendly with the honourable gentleman, the member for Christchurch, and the right honourable gentleman, the member for Aylesbury, and the honourable gentleman member for Stroud, and the honourable gentleman member for Strangford. I'm friendly with a great many members, having served in this place for 22 years. I do not get involved in matters appertaining to standards. There is a machinery for deliberation on those matters in the form of a Parliamentary Standards Commissioner and a committee. They deal with those matters. And the honourable gentleman only a few moments ago was saying, in what he thought was a frightfully clever twist, that he'd come to accept that I was right to say that I couldn't get involved. And if the honourable gentleman is now saying that in fact my close relationship shows that I'm trying to defend the honourable gentleman, he is contradicting himself, not within days or weeks or months, he's contradicting himself within minutes. I'm not trying to defend the conduct of the right honourable member. What I'm doing on behalf and in support of the House is defending, colleagues, members of the public, the integrity of an independent process. If the honourable gentleman can't or won't grasp that fact, with the very greatest of respect to him, or such respect as I can muster, that says more about him than it does about me. Sir Peter Bottomley.
Mr. Speaker, I, and I hope the whole House, will